I mean, the key is not to fight the system,
Yeah.
not to try to to find workarounds. I mean, don't find workarounds. Just understand the system and make it your best friend.
Do you have any recommendations for like the best architecture to use for SwiftUI?
After you reach the maximum technical level that you can reach, what's up next? I mean, you can either go into architecture. You need to go one layer above, seeing the bigger picture, or you can just try to grow your team and create the most productive team.
How do you feel about the Singleton design pattern? What's up? Welcome to another episode of the iOS Dev Podcast. In this episode, we had Catalin Patrascu come on the show. Catalin is a lead iOS engineer with over a decade experience in the field. And as a fairly young engineer, I found this episode super helpful, and I hope you guys do as well. Enjoy. Was there a moment that you remember feeling like, okay, I'm a senior developer now?
No, actually not, because um, as I started like practicing alone. When I switched from Windows development to iOS development, I was self-taught. I actually I never did like a specialized course or something like that. Just looking on some tutorials and then trying everything out. And then project started to pop up, and I started doing working with different startups. So I couldn't say for sure that was a moment when I felt I was senior. I was just like maybe the time elapsed, and that was all. But I was all the time trying to look for solutions, and to especially at the beginning when the iPhone just appeared, nobody knew what to do. You had some documentation and a lot of trial and error, and that was it. So yeah,
Yeah, and at that time it was Objective C, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Objective C. I was fortunate enough to have a background in C and C++, so I didn't consider it. I mean, at first the syntax looked weird, but I
Yeah.
get accustomed to it quite fast, and then I didn't see any more problems. I know a lot of people were complaining at that moment, and even now they are complaining about the syntax of Objective C. But
Yeah.
once you get the hang of it, you start to enjoy it.
And how did you initially get into tech and programming and all that?
Well, I think it always ran in my family, some kind of tech DNA. Because my father was a TV repair guy. And since I was a small child, I was very curious about how electronics works. I was actually doing some electronic circuits, like I was soldering them and stuff like that, playing playing around. And then I just wanted to study in this field. So I went to high school and then university on mathematics and informatics, and that was my beginning.
Wait, so did you do any TV repair yourself, or was it
No,
just your
no,
dad doing?
it was
Oh
too
no.
complex. Maybe like a radio at some stage, but
Wait, what's involved in TV repair? Because
well,
I mean, the TVs were a lot different back then, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. You had light bulbs, or I don't know how it is the exact term. You didn't have integrated circuits like you have today, so you could pretty much just like replace a small part of the motherboard, and then everything would work out. But then afterwards, when all those integrated circuits appeared, you couldn't just replace that. You would replace the whole motherboard, and then that job was not was became deprecated soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the advancement of technology, it has the cons and benefits as well.
Yeah. So you were just tinkering with circuits, and then you decided to do informatics. You said, right?
Yeah, I was quite keen towards mathematics, and then informatics seemed like the logical next step for me,
Mhm.
because I got my
And
first computer when I was 14 years old. 14, yeah, 14 years old. I got my first computer. At first, I was just playing around all day long, Mortal Kombat, stuff like that. But then I
yeah.
came interested into programming. Like, okay, let's see how we can do some stuff.
What kind of stuff did you play around with the programming?
So at first I was doing like very little C, C++ scripts, like maybe doing like a small calculator in the console with no interface, stuff like that, like scripts to read some files, do some parsing, something like that.
Yeah,
I wasn't working with an actual GUI
yeah,
and interface.
yeah. And what resources did you have to learn at that point?
Yeah, I think back then there were some books on the matter because the internet was not that evolved. I remember the dial-up times where you had to wait for 30 minutes until you can get connected to the internet, and then the speed was awful. Uh, yeah, so the internet was not that useful at that stage. So basically, books, printed books, but there were like a few. There weren't many.
And in university, what career path did you do?
So I took like a bachelor in science.
Mhm.
The university was mathematics and informatics. In the first year, there were more mathematics than informatics, and then in the second and third year, it turned more into informatics, like special courses on algorithms, databases, operating system, assembler, stuff like that. And after that, I went with the masters because in our culture in the Eastern Europe, the parents always encourage you to study as much as you can because this way you'll have better chances in life.
Yeah,
So I just took the natural path,
yeah,
but then
yeah.
I stopped. No PhD.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hispanic parents are pretty similar. They
Yeah.
want us to just go to school and just keep going. And from the masters, how did you decide what field to go into, like in terms of computer science and programming?
Yeah, for the local university because there were other universities like in the capital in Bucharest, which was abroad. But at that time, my parents couldn't afford me to send me there, so I took a local university, and there weren't many options there. You had only like computer mathematics and informatics, mathematics from which you would become a professor, and like one or two more options, but more towards the pedagogical side of career.
Oh, and I don't think we mentioned this, but you were in Romania the whole time, right?
Yeah, that time again the software development, especially in my city,
Mhm.
which is not. I mean, it's a big city, but the industry itself it's not that evolved, or at least it wasn't that evolved back then. There weren't many jobs on site. So I looked towards a freelancing career. At that time, you could find websites like Rent a Coder and I don't know freelancer.com. I think it's the one that bought Rent a Coder afterwards, and websites like that. So I started creating a profile there, bidding on projects, and this is how I gained my first project.
And something interesting that I see is like in the tech field that I've seen is there's a big, well, I wouldn't say big, but there's a good majority of Eastern European developers, like compared to other ethnicities, like Eastern Europeans, and they are prominent in the tech industry. And is there any particular reason, or would you know like the backstory behind that?
Uh, I think, and what are my thoughts? It's like the eastern part of Europe, being until the 90s, being in a Soviet country, in the uh, yeah, being a Soviet country. Back then, there was a lot of emphasis on learning mathematics. So a lot of people, and in the school, the school agenda and the professors of mathematics were very good. So who wanted to learn mathematics, he could do it from the best. So having this mathematics background and understanding and having algorithmic way of thinking and structuring things, then it made possible the switch to software development easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true because I studied math in university too, and when I started programming, I felt like it helped a lot, like having that background.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember a professor from university. I asked him in the first year, like, okay, why are we doing so much mathematics when we should actually do informatics? And he said, wait for it, Catalin. Wait for it 1 year, and then you'll understand. And now I understand. I mean, of course, I'm not using everything that I learned from mathematics, and I forgot a lot of things. But at least I have the fundamentals to understand some of the stuff like statistical part and so on.
Mhm. And how did you get into iOS and mobile development?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story because at first, so I started with this C, C++. I was doing console programming, and then I said, okay, let's go to the next level. Let's do some actual software that has an interface, like you see on Windows. So I started looking into that. I started with Visual C++. Then I moved to Visual Basic when I saw how easy it's to create interfaces. And during this time, the iPhone got released. So then I thought I just not the iPhone but the first smartphones. So you had those old smartphones with the snake and everything,
Yeah,
the snake game
yeah, like the
with
Nokia's.
yeah, exactly. Nokia, Samsung, yeah, all of them. And I started to get interested, like, okay, how can I program this? How can I create something like this? Because for me, it was amazing from a desktop screen to just create something that runs on that smaller screen. So I looked into Java, into J2ME, Java 2 Mobile Edition, uh, and like 1 year afterwards, the or 2 years, the iPhone got released, and I said, okay, no more black and white or green screen. This one is colored, so it looks awesome. Let's try to see what's up with this. Because again, I was amazed about the power having a desktop in your pocket, which for
Yeah,
me it was like awesome. So yeah, and then I switched to iOS.
dang.
That's actually an interesting story as well. Switching.
Yeah, how did that switch happen? Because been working on Windows the whole time, and
Yeah, exactly. And I was a fan of Windows. So before Mac, I couldn't even imagine that there was something better than Windows. And I
yeah,
was arguing with all my friends like Windows is the best, Windows is the best, and so on. Uh, so when the iPhone appeared, I got a second-hand one from one of my friends after 6 months, 8 months of its release. So okay, I had a phone. I could play with it. I could install some apps, but how do you write software for it? Again, there wasn't that much documentation, so I had to search a lot on the internet, and then I came up with a virtual machine. Basically, on Windows, you had to run a virtual machine, and on it to install the Macintosh OS, and that was an awful experience because although
yeah,
I was having like a pretty decent PC workstation, running that virtual machine with Mac, it made writing software like impossible because even the mouse, when I was scrolling it on the screen, it had like a little delay, like 0.5 seconds, something like that, and it was awful. And then at that moment, I was working with someone from US. I was doing some other kind of job with some of my friends, and I asked him, okay, what do you think about the iPhone? He said, well, it's great. I really want to develop an app for it. And I said, okay, well, let's say the price is 1,000 euros, USD, whatever it was. This is the price of a Mac Mini. So you can get me the Mac Mini, ship it to me, or send me the money in advance, and then I can buy the Mac Mini, and I'll write the app for free for you. And that's how I started, and I got my hardware.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a smart way of getting the hardware.
yeah. I didn't have the money. I mean, what I was doing as a freelancer back then, it was like pocket change. For me as a student, it was enough. I could buy some little things and party a little, but it wasn't enough to get a Mac Mini.
And was Xcode out at the time? Like, what was
Yeah, yeah.
so
Xcode
so
has been there forever.
yeah, yeah. So it was
I know there
Xcode
were
and Objective C.
Objective-C and UIKit. Yeah, I know people that were actually writing the code in Notepad and then compiling from the command line and running it from the command line directly on the device through the virtual machine.
Oh, for the virtual
Yeah,
machine.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you could do that. You can do that today as well.
Yeah.
Just run in the terminal everything. Yeah.
What was the app idea that you built for them?
Yeah, it was a photography app. So it was a catalog of actual cameras, comparing the features between different photo cameras. Because this guy was very passionate into photography.
How did it do? Wait, was the app just for him, or was it like app
No,
idea
it
to
was
sell?
it was released on the store. I don't think it was a price at that moment, or maybe it had. I, I don't know exactly. I mean, he did some money, but not extraordinary. And after a while, I think it was free.
And then from there, you started building all. Did
Yeah,
you like work
exactly.
on your own projects, or did you do more like
Uh,
freelancing work for other people?
I started doing my own projects because I had some ideas as well, like very small ideas, fun ideas. Uh, Back then, the store was not that full of apps, so you could easily create apps and everyone could find it. And in parallel, I just updated my profile on the freelancing websites and saying, okay, I'm doing iOS development and starting bidding on iOS projects. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Wait, how does that work? Bidding on the iOS projects?
Well, I mean, are you familiar with freelancing websites?
Some of them like Upwork, but when you say bid,
Yeah,
so like
exactly,
you
exactly, exactly.
you
Yeah.
you
So
say
it's
your
just
price, or how does that
yeah,
work?
yeah, exactly. So the client has a budget, or not even a budget, maybe like a maximum budget. Like let's say we have 5K, 10K, whatever, and then people start to bid on that. Say, okay, I can do it for 2K, I can do it for 3K, I can do it for
Oh,
9, and so on. Yeah, and this still works today on Upwork, for example.
yeah. Ah,
They still
I
have
didn't
the
even.
bidding ranges.
I didn't know it worked like the bidding part of it. I didn't know it worked like that.
Yeah, it's just like in the market when you scream the price and that's it.
Yeah. So in Romania is what is like the so for like the top engineers, what do they usually do? Do they go work in Europe or the US? How does that work?
Well, it depends. The market it's scattered. I've met a lot of great engineers working for companies on site. Others prefer contracting and freelancing, either on the European market or the US market. So I don't know. It's 50-50, maybe 60-40 for the employed ones.
Oh, so it kind of just depends on like their preference
Yeah,
and what
exactly.
they
I
want.
mean, on the preference, on scarcity, on the adversity to risk, on the safety, if they have family or not, because it's not easy to be a freelancer. You have to have a certain mindset and not get scared if for 2 weeks you don't get any offer or any project, or for 1 month or 2 months. You always need to have a backup for these cases.
So when did you get like your? Because when you got that Mac, you were in college. You said right.
Yeah.
So when did you get like your official role as a iOS developer? You know, like not official role, but your like first full time job or contract, like a long contract.
Um, I think like 2 years maybe afterwards. Yeah, it was still from that platform where I bid it for a financial app. The the guy that was presenting the project had the iPad app and wanted to convert it into an iPhone app, but the design would change. Uh, and that was very very interesting because I remember back then I bid it. I said, okay, yeah, it can be done in 2 months or whatever, because he was aiming for 3 months. And then he called me, like had a Skype call. He has shown me like the code. Here's the code. Here are the number of windows. There are 50 windows. So that's a lot. Are you sure you can do this? I said, sure. I can do it even shorter than that. But back then I was young and I was
Yeah.
working maybe 12 hours per day. I didn't have anything else to do, so I could finish up a project no matter how complex it was quite fast. So this is how I landed my first role. Afterwards, the client with whom I remain a very good friend until today as well. He's the guy I visited in California that I was mentioning you about earlier on. He said, "Okay, let's cut the middleman and let's work together. I will hire you full time and let's develop more features for this product." So that's how it started. And from there, it started with more work. I had to get a team, do the Android version as well, and then having a team, I started working on other projects as well.
And how did you keep up with all like the new API and changes that were happening? It was just through the projects, right, that you were doing, or were you learning as well on the
N-
side, or
Now or back then?
back then?
Back then, I was, I don't know if at first the WWDC was there. I don't think so, or maybe I don't know about it. But back then, I was just reading some blog posts and experimenting a lot. So each project, even though it had maybe, I don't know, 80%, 90% reassemblance with regarding the features, uh, it always had like a tricky part that I needed to investigate and learn. So I learned a lot from experience back then, and afterwards I moved more to blogs, maybe books and so on, but mostly blogs.
All right. And now I kind of want to transition into talking about iOS development in general, and like maybe some like career-ish questions. And the
Sure.
first one is, what do you think separates like a junior developer from a senior developer?
I think the most important skill that separates them is how they approach solving problems. So the junior can somehow sometimes be stubborn and try to fix something or find a solution to something for days and delay the project without admitting like, hey, I don't know, I need some help. While a senior will always like, if something doesn't get solved fast, he shouldn't that's the right word, be ashamed of that and reach out to other fellow developers. That's how I see it. And of course, asking the right questions. Like the junior may be more inclined to ask technical questions to persons that are not technical, and then he will end up with some bad requirements. While a senior will understand also the business part, the end user interface, and ask more advanced questions from which he can subtract the right technical decisions.
And what would you recommend for for like improving that for like let's say a junior developer? How can they get better at those?
From my experience, you just need to experiment with as much things as possible. If you're working in a company in a product company on a single project, you can experiment doing your hobby projects with other technologies and see how they interact. Or maybe you can do like a drill where you are the business owner and have some uh, business idea and then somehow try to communicate it with the developer. I'm not aware of any book, but probably there are some articles out there on this as well. Maybe better drills.
Yeah. What would you say are the differences between like a lead and a senior iOS dev?
Yeah. So uh, this is on the career ladder. It's a natural step, but most of the not most. Let's say from what I have seen, from my experience, a lot of senior iOS developers just want to stay on the technical track, maybe turn into staff engineer or going on the architect uh, side of the business, while only some that enjoy enjoy talking with people, helping them grow in their career, choose the lead position because that's the difference. I mean, after you reach the maximum technical level that you can reach, what's up next? I mean, you can either go into architecture, you need to go one layer above, seeing the bigger picture, or you can just try to grow your team and create the most productive team.
Which do you prefer?
Well, I'm um, I'm hands-on. I prefer both. I mean, I like programming a lot. I like architecture, but I also like talking with people and helping them grow as well. Because, like the old men say, after you reach a certain age, you just want to give back something. So that's why I started writing on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. I'm just trying to give something back from what I have learned.
And what advice do you typically give? Like, let's say somebody who's like very early in their career. What do you typically tell them?
I just tell them to practice a lot. That's it. I mean, you can read 100 books. If you
Yeah,
don't practice any, that's equal to zero. And it
yeah,
happens
that's
to
true.
me also. I mean, I'm reading, for example, a book on architecture or refactoring. If I'm reading more than 10, 20 pages and I don't actually code something or try something out, maybe like, I don't know, map a diagram or something like that, I mean, actual exercise, then it will just flow away.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's very true. And I try to like make sure I have like a project or something if I'm learning something that I can apply it to.
Yeah, especially now with the SwiftUI, you always need like, if you're reading two lines of from one book, you just need to apply it instantly.
Yeah. Have you seen any like major changes or trends in mobile development in like the past few years?
Well, there is this fight with the cross platforms. I've
Oh,
I've tried them since the beginning. It was Titanium and then Xamarin in C Sharp. And then after playing with them, I just threw them away. And then I think we have React and then Flutter, the new cool kid. I've experienced with Flutter as well, and compared to other cross-platform frameworks, it's quite different. It's more close to the native side. It's quite powerful, um, but at the moment, being at the beginning, it's quite hard to put like a stamp on it and say, okay, this is the future. I mean, everybody is trying to do progress. Is trying to go towards declarative UI and declarative programming.
yeah.
That's why Flutter, SwiftUI, and then we have in Android the how is it called?
It's
Yeah, I
Compose,
don't.
Jetpack, something.
Yeah,
Jetpack
Jetpack. Yeah,
Compose.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. So everybody's working towards this direction to simplify the development. Now I don't know if there will be a winner in the end or not, but for now there is plenty of room for everyone.
What would you say, like, if let's say a company comes to you and they're trying to figure out should they do cross development or do native on both sides, or maybe just native and focus on one first?
Um, Here it's more not about the technical part, but more about the business part. I mean, how many resources do you have? Are you planning to have two different teams? Can you afford that? Me personally, if I were to do a startup, like a small startup, I would go with Flutter 100% because it's easier for me if I'm alone. If there is a bigger team, and again, you have the resources to hire on both ends, on iOS and Android, and especially if you're trying to do something special, so to speak. So, are you using some kind of special sensors, animations? Do you really need the native speed, the native feel, or are you doing some, so to speak, boring app that in fact serves a business need? So, depending on this,
Yeah, and it would depend too on what market they're targeting, right? Like if they're making the app for like U.S. customers, or let's say like Romania or Eastern Europe customers, right?
yeah, yeah, that will
And
uh, that will be a point as well. Yeah,
and for like for example, in Romania, I think does Android dominate the market?
yeah, definitely. Definitely, and I don't think necessarily only in Romania,
Uh,
but
in
yeah,
most of the world, right? In most of the
in
world,
in Europe as well. The iPhone doesn't have that dominance that has in the US. I mean, from what I have observed, I don't have like any data, but from what I have talked with friends from other countries as well. I mean, now all the Android phones and companies have high-end products as well with very powerful hardware. It's not, and it will never be as good as the iPhone,
yeah.
but they are still doing the job.
Yeah, so the iPhone isn't looked at as a quote unquote luxury device for people to have over there, or is that how it's looked?
Um, at first, a few years ago, yes, but nowadays, I mean, look at the I don't know Samsung S2021. I don't know. I lost count of the models, but if you look, they have similar prices, and maybe sometimes the camera is a bit better.
Yeah.
So you can see a lot of people having that high-end Android phone, but not the iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially with like I think they have the iPhone SE now, right? And then
Yeah,
so like the cost to enter is a lot lower.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And there is also the aspect of the price of the apps. So iPhone was known for a lot of time, like having its own store with everything having a price, while on the Android most of the things were free. But
Yeah.
now there is this shift because companies want to make money from the Google Play as well, which is normal to monetize on that. So we'll see. At some stage, probably it's natural to shift to the same direction, but now they just caught up one or the or other the other.
Have you seen a shift from people going to like paid apps to now like subscription, right? I feel like there's a lot of subscription apps out there now.
Yeah, I mean this is a trend for I don't know maybe the past 10 years. There were talks like 10 years ago or 8 years, something like that, like switching to this business model, freemium model. Give the user something for free just to get a taste of the app and see that it actually functions. and then if they want, they can get more features for a certain price. Plus, it's better for the business to have like a monthly recurring income rather than a one-time base. I mean,
Yeah.
look at Photoshop. I mean, you could get Photoshop for, I don't know, $400, 500, I don't know, and then you got it like one time, and that was it. You had like updates for the next 10 years. While now you have the subscription based model as well, and you have to pay $100 per year.
Yeah.
And in the end, it will generate more money. After 2 years or 3 years, it will generate more money than a higher fixed price at the beginning.
Yeah. And it'll be worth more. Like people would be willing to pay. Like business owners would be willing to buy like the business if it has
Yeah,
the reoccurring revenue.
exactly.
Now switching back to more like iOS stuff, where do you stand on like the Swift UI versus UIKit front right now?
uh, like I said, everybody is it's gearing towards the declarative design, and they are taking active steps into this. Um, SwiftUI is still at the beginning, although it has, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. I'm not sure when it was, 4 years maybe. Uh, from what I can see, Apple is actively investing into developing SwiftUI, which is great because they need to keep up with the competition. Um, a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it. Uh,
Yeah. Do you think it's production ready Swift UI or
the short answer would be yes. The longer answer would be it depends. And I will tell you what I want to say about it. What I want to say with this. Um, Depending on your app needs and the scenario that you are trying to solve, you you could need like more features or less features of SwiftUI. So depending on that, you can use like a simplified version and not go for the wild. While with the UIKit, I mean, this paradigm shift, it's hard at the beginning because once you get accustomed with a certain framework, it's hard to switch to something new. Um, UIKit at first it was not perfect, and of course people complained about it. I mean, even today they complain about some bugs, and that's it. But it offers you the imperative power to do whatever you want, so you can access anything from everywhere. While with
yeah.
SwiftUI, this paradigm shifted, so now you just need to think about it like differently. It's not that it's not possible, but you just need to think about it differently.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things when because earlier this year I started doing more Swift UI, and yeah, it's like coming from UIK, you have a lot of control and a lot of things you can do. And Swift UI, it's not that you can't do it; it's just things are done differently, so you have to
Yeah,
change the way you think.
I mean the key is not to fight the system,
Yeah,
not to try to to find workarounds. I mean, don't find workarounds. Just understand the system and make it your best friend,
yeah.
and that's it.
And do you have any recommendations for like the best architecture to use for Swift UI?
Well, this is again a hot topic. So
Yeah, yeah. I think in general, not just Swift UI, but no matter what you're building, right?
that lights up the community.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not a believer that there is a perfect architecture for anything. It depends again on your team, on your skills, on what you want to adopt. Do you want to rely on third-party libraries? Do you want to write, I don't know, bindings, whatever, by yourself, and so on? I see there is some discussion on the MV architecture, model view, and the MVVM. Like people are asking, do we still need MVVM on SwiftUI? Because you can already put all that logic there. But if we are thinking about UIKit and the MVC, I think it's a similar thing. In MVC, you had the power to put everything in the view controller, and then everybody said, "Okay, it's too much. Let's split it." I think it's similar in SwiftUI as well. I mean, if you want testability, it's better to, and that's my personal thought. I like to make the views as dumb as possible. So just consume some data, display it, move the logic in some like lower layer, MVVM, let's say, and then I can test in isolation the view model, for example. You could argue that you can test in isolation the SwiftUI view as well, but then this will mean instantiating your SwiftUI view, and also from the events that get fired, some weird things can happen in the UI as well, or trigger something else. So
Oh, and
I would go with MVVM, but that's me personally. I mean, for a very small and simple app, if I don't want to be consistent with the rest of the system, I can leave everything in the view, and that's it.
yeah, and I think you like you said you could do some testing if you had it all in the view, but it would make your test a little bit slower, right?
Um,
Because you're instantiating the view.
Probably. I haven't tested that.
Yeah.
I haven't tested putting the actual workload inside the view. I just did it like in the view model, and then tested the view model. But probably yes. I don't know. I can run some tests and see.
Yeah. I mean, and even Apple, they like in their projects that they release, they go back and forth between MV and MVVM, I believe.
Yeah. Again, I read the discussion on Apple forums, and it's a hot discussion. You don't want to go in there. um, I see it a bit as a MVC. I mean,
Yeah.
MVC was powerful enough to do some simple stuff, or maybe if you could put like the controller outside of the view controller, like a second controller, like the view model, then you could split some of the responsibility. Maybe things are just like got misunderstood somewhere on the way, but as long as you can separate your business logic from the view, from the actual displaying, then that
Yeah.
should be good enough to test it and control it better.
And in UIKit, what did you like to use, by the way?
I went with MVVM and also MVP. I used a lot MVP as well.
I'm guessing the resources you used to learn that was just like your your experience like working on actual projects, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think MVP was more suited on Android development, and somehow I took it from there as well, and then it fitted well with the rest of the app. I didn't have to use some third party like Eric Swift or something similar. Although you can do MVVM without Eric Swift, you can do it with closures, and that's it. But that was what I was using back then, and then I switched to MVVM because I saw that was the trend. I said, okay, let's try this out.
Wait, how do you feel about the singleton design pattern, by the way? Because I
Oh
think
my
like
god!
that's another hot topic, right?
Oh my god! I just posted about that like 3 or 4 days ago, like the drawbacks. So from my experience, singleton is seen as an anti-pattern. It doesn't mean necessarily that it's not a good pattern, but most of the people don't use it properly, and that's why you have tight coupling, you have thread safety, you have low testability. I mean, you can overcome all this. Thread safety, sure, you can put some dispatches, some barriers, some whatever you want there, and then you can make it thread safe. For testability, sure, you can subclass it and make the initializer public and not private, and then you can test it. For tight coupling, instead of calling it directly, you can just inject it wherever you want to use it. So you can overcome all this. But people, if they use it like by the book implementation and just call it from whatever in the code and don't have a thread safe and so on, there will be a lot of drawbacks. So that's why instead of thinking about all these drawbacks, better not use it if you really don't need it. That's what I think.
What alternatives would you suggest? And would I guess it would depend on the use case, right? Like how it's being used.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, keep the dependency injection, inject whatever collaborator you want. If you don't need a single instance across your whole app, like a database manager or a logger, I mean, database manager, okay, because you only need one opening of your database. But a logger, for example, you can have multiple instances. You don't need necessarily a singleton for that. So depending on case-to-case basis, you can go with other alternatives.
All right. Yeah, because I use it sometimes, and especially my indie projects, because I try to like I kind of want to move quickly, and I don't want to overcomplicate
Yeah,
things.
I get you. I used it a lot in the early times. I used it a lot.
First, I'd say you're really active on social media, right? Like with the iOS content you put out.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to.
Yeah, like you're a really good resource actually to like follow, whether it's like on LinkedIn or even on Twitter or X now. I want to ask what got you started?
Yeah, so uh, I was thinking, okay, what can I do more? I saw all these people like writing content. I've been following some of the people from the iOS community for a while, and I said, okay, let me try this out. I mean, of course, people will laugh, will mock me, will insult me because that's normal when you put yourself out there. But I said, okay, let me try to do this for 1 year, like write every single day, a big thing, a smaller thing. Sometimes I'm off and I'm writing some idiotic things that I I think. Sometimes I write better content, but that's life. I just want to show up there for 1 year, try to write each day and see what happens. I mean, will I meet new people? Will I create new connections? Will I get new contracts? I don't know. I just want to try it out.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Like your output is insane. Like especially the quality and like the nuggets of information you put out.
Yeah, I'm trying to post about some higher level iOS topics, not about specifics. Because for specifics, you have some content creators that are doing like specific things, like how does
Swift data and stuff.
async works in iOS, yeah, or
Yeah.
Swift data or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you look at it, this these technical specificalities they evolve and get obsolete, while knowing some principles and changing your mindset and way of approaching problems, I find it more powerful. But this doesn't mean, of course, that you shouldn't read that content as well, because it's important. I consume a lot of content, even though maybe I don't like or comment on each post. I consume a lot of content and trying to learn new things every day. Or at least if I don't learn it or read the whole article, I just know, like, okay, let's bookmark this. I know that when I will have problem with Swift data, I have this article and I know I can find the answer here.
Yeah. And how do you decide what is worthy of being tweeted or not? Do you have like a system that you use, or how do you go about that?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm trying to put as much quality content as possible. Like I said, sometimes I succeed, sometimes I don't.
But But even if you don't, though, it's really good because you learn something from it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of my worst posts when everybody everybody was like in a total war with me. I learned a lot from those posts because they post this link like, okay, you're totally off. Here's the link. You don't know absolutely anything. I said, okay, yeah, let me read this, and so on. And I learned a lot as well. So I'm learning a lot from the community as well, which is great. But for this, you need a tough skin.
Yeah, I think it's a
It's
good
not
thing.
easy.
Like if as long as you're not like being mean, right? But if you come like, oh, I think this is wrong, and like you actually show or tell like why, you give like solid and good reasons. I think it's really helpful for both and for the
Yeah,
community.
exactly. If you're respectful and you have a constructive feedback, sure, just bring it on. I would love to see that. If you're unpolite, probably I will block you or not answer to you. It doesn't matter because I don't want to fill myself with negative energy. There are people out there that are doing this.
Yeah.
They take pride in finding someone that mistakes something, and then they threw all this on them.
Just looking
But
for
yeah,
the negative or like the bad.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're writing a post, it happened to me like multiple times. I writing something that's like 90% accurate, and then I just add like a bullet point of an idea, and that's a bit off. And everybody starts taking about that. Like, okay, here you're wrong, here wrong, here wrong, but not saying anything about the rest of the content. And that's fine. I mean, that's writing on social networks.
They want you to be perfect. They want you to be...
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I don't. I will learn from my mistakes and I will
Yeah.
try to be perfect one day.
Yeah, no, you mentioned something just now about like the foundation and the fundamentals. And so what would you think are what would you say are the like the foundations and fundamentals for any developer?
So they first need to understand computer programming, all that stuff with variables, repetitive structures, and so on. Then go into design patterns, understand the design patterns. Then, depending on the language, learn the specificalities of that language, and then just try it out, and that's it. I mean, I actually have an infographic on this posted on my profile on LinkedIn, on the feature profile, which is absolutely free. And I wrote there like 10 steps, 10 steps to create maintainable iOS apps, and this applies to career ladder as well, because mastering some of those skills there can get you in a senior or staff engineer position as well.
Yeah, the link I'll put the link to that in the description. And where can the people find you and follow you to get more iOS and developer knowledge?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm active only on social networks. I don't have my newsletter, or I mean I have a website. It's catalinpatrascu.com. Say my name, and from there you are redirected either to Gumroad to get this infographic, or to my LinkedIn or Twitter or X profile. So basically, I'm there.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of the iOS Dev Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you guys like, comment, share, subscribe, and consider sending this to a fellow developer. If you want to support the show, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and even consider joining the Patreon.